this week's unboxing of our Home Chef Menu Order Home Kit. Today we're going to be making two dishes. We're going to make a barbecue beef meatloaf, and we're going to be making classic chicken piccata. So as always, these all came to me today in my Home Chef box. Every meal came delivered in a bag that looks an awful lot like this one. And everything that you need for the kit is in there. So I'm going to actually turn off this light behind me because a little bit of a glare. There we go. That's much better. So we're going to start off. I did a little bit of meal prep, but pretty much everything we're going to do together, step by step. I had a chance to look over the menu, the recipes a little bit earlier, and I found that the barbecue meatloaves are probably going to take us a little bit longer than the piccata, so we'll start off with that one. Looking at this, every menu comes with every box comes with all the ingredients and a menu card, which is what we're going to use to follow along with. And we're going to start with the barbecue meatloaf, like I mentioned. So we start by putting the oven to 450 degrees, which I've done. I've gone ahead and preset that. And I've got a baking sheet right here, prepared and aligned with some foil. And we're going to hit it with some cooking spray. And this is ready for us to prepare the next step. Now, the first step in these ingredients, it asks us to take the ground beef, which they sent along to us, and mix it up with these barbecue spice packets that they sent along. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and put this beef into our mixing bowl. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in these spice packets. One. And the other. And then it also asks us to add half of the milk that they sent along. They sent along a half pint of 2% milk. So we're going to add half of that. It doesn't really give me a measuring cup or anything. It just says add half. So I'm going to follow the recipe. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and add that in here. And it says to save the other half for the potatoes that we're going to make. And then it asks us to add in the potatoes. So we're going to add in that. Not the potatoes, the panko. They sent along some panko breadcrumbs, so we're going to use those. And for those of you who are not familiar with what panko breadcrumbs are, they're just regular old breadcrumbs. They're a little bit bigger. They're sometimes called Japanese-style breadcrumbs. You see them on a lot of the cooking shows. They're very, very popular. They got a nice crunchy texture to them, so they're really kind of fun to work with. But if you don't have them, regular breadcrumbs are usually just fine. So we've got those mixed in here. We're going to mix these up together. Oh, it also says to add in some salt. Don't forget the salt. As many good chefs will share with you, salt is key. So this one says to add in, pretty sure it just says a pinch. Yep, a pinch. So we'll add a little bit more than a pinch because, as I've been told before, more is better when you're dealing with cooking and salt. So I'll add that in. And I'm just taking this mix here and just mixing it on up. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this mixture and we're going to form two equal-sized loaves, and we're going to place them on the prepared cooking sheet. Now, you know, a lot of folks have at home their own family meatloaf recipes. I know I've got one that we use here at the house that my mother used to make, and she makes at home, or she made at home. Some people add a whole bunch of different things. This is a really, really easy meatloaf recipe. It's a barbecue rub, spice rub that they sent us. No particular name brand, so you could actually find something to substitute that. I'm guessing from the size of the packets, it's probably about a tablespoon to 1 to 2 tablespoons. Throw that in with your beef. I threw in the panko breadcrumbs. I threw in a little bit of milk, and that's my meatloaf mixture right there. This is ready to go. So we're going to take that. First time I've ever added milk to meatloaf. That was a new one. Let's see. Somebody's going to send me an email saying, you always add milk to meatloaf. What kind of heathen are you? All right, so we'll add that one there. We have our other one. Roughly about the same size. All right. And it asks us to put these into the oven for 20 to 23 minutes. So let me rinse my hands here. And I'm going to use my favorite little smart home device. Computer, set a timer for 22 minutes.
22 minutes, starting now.
Put that in here. And that is step 1 on the meatloaf. Step 2, they direct us to do the potatoes. Now, one of the things that they recommended is that we cut them up. There were no directions on whether or not to peel the potatoes. Now, some folks, not peeling potatoes is sacrilege. I gotta be honest with you, I really enjoy, especially these little gold potatoes, making smashed potatoes, which is basically mashed potatoes with the peel still on it. It's easier, it's very flavorful as long as you wash them before you decide to cut them up, and you make sure you boil them up well. So we've got these, and we're gonna dice these up into 1/4-inch pieces. And in order to save time, they sent me a small bag of these. There were about maybe 8 of these small yellow gold potatoes. Well, to save some time, I went ahead and cut most of them up earlier, because the last thing you do is just watch me sit here and cut potatoes in silence, or worse, try to make small talk with a camera while slicing up potatoes. So I've got these here, and it says to add them to water and bring it to a boil. So I've got a pot here on the stove, ready to go. Adding them in. We'll bring those up to a boil. It says do it covered over medium-high heat. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to set a second timer. This one asks us for about 14 to 18 minutes. So let's set a timer at 16 minutes. Computer, set a second potato timer at 16 minutes.
Second potato timer, 16 minutes.
There we go.
Now.
So now we have those potatoes are cooking and the meatloaf are cooking. While we are waiting for those to cook, we are going to prepare the green beans. Now, the green beans come pre-portioned here. Open this up. And the instructions say, pretty simply, trim the ends of the green beans and cut them into 2-inch pieces. So that's what we're going to do. So I wouldn't make you watch me doing the potatoes, but I'm going to make you watch me cut up the green beans. 1 to 2-inch pieces, I think, are fine. I'm actually going to take the pan that I plan on sauteing them in a little bit later. Actually, no, we take the pot that I'm going to cook them in a little bit. It says to put them into about 1/4 cup of water. It's a little bit more than 1/4 cup, but I like my green beans a little bit more well done. I'm not a big al dente fan. So I'm going to throw these in here as I prep them. And again, the nice thing about these ingredients, they send you everything pre-portioned, but these recipes are easy to duplicate. They're easily available. And it really just calls for a level of creativity. If you want to throw some different spices in there, you want to kind of try different interpretations or different manifestations. When we get to the as we're doing the meatloaf, one of the variations actually says you could use ground turkey if you wanted to, and it actually gives you some adjustments on how to do that as well. So we'll get those going. And meanwhile, I've got my potatoes are boiling there. That's great. And for those of you who this is the first time you've joined me on one of these, I know I've got a few new viewers who are going to be tuning in from Everly. These are really great, especially considering everything that's going on now in our day-to-day lives. This meal kit is delivered right to my door. This showed up at the property at about noontime. on Friday. And we do these videos on Friday, so we get them pretty much as fresh as we can get them. They're not the most inexpensive meal kits, but they definitely have, in my experience, some of the best quality ingredients. I've been preparing meals now for about 4 or 5 weeks, and each one has just been a great experience. And they're fun to put together. They're probably a lot of fun. They're easy and fun to do on your own. They're probably fun to do if you get a chance to do them with a partner. What really is enjoyable about them is the fact that once you've got them plated up and you sit down to enjoy it, you really do feel like you're getting a restaurant experience, which so many of us have been missing. You know, especially now when it's so hard to go out and the businesses are closed. Yeah, you can order takeout. Yeah, we can have Uber Eats delivered, but nothing really beats a hot, fresh meal. You know, no matter how good your delivery service is or where they're coming from, it's never going to be like it came right from the kitchen. Whereas these meals, they come to you about as fresh as you can possibly get them. And, you know, right from stove to plates to sitting down to enjoy them and dine, you really get a great experience with them. I can't recommend it highly enough. If you're interested in ordering these and you haven't figured out how to do it yet, you can check with me or you can check with Angela. We are more than happy to go ahead and give you a discount code, which gives you $35 off your first order. I want to say I'm not getting any sort of promotion or any special benefit by doing these. It's not a commercial for Home Chef by any stretch of the imagination. It's just something that I found works really, really well. And, you know, I would encourage you, if you're looking for something to do and you're sitting at home bored, this is a great way to learn a new craft if you're not an experienced cook, or to learn some new aspects of an old craft if you've been cooking for years and you want to kind of figure out how to add a little bit more spice to what you put together. So here we go. We're almost done with these. And then we'll mince the chives. So we've got a little bit of time for those potatoes to boil up. And we've got a little bit of time for those barbecue meatloaves, which is when we're going to make a switch shortly over to the chicken piccata, which is actually much easier. It's a classic Italian recipe. You've probably made it yourself a million times. Maybe what we do here is something very familiar. Maybe what we do here is a new twist. And you're like, hey, I've never thought of trying it that way. I was surprised to see the lemon zest that was going to be included. And I'm actually excited to be able to show you that. As a novice cook, it's always fun to find new things. There we are, we're almost done. All right. And it looks like the excitement of my green bean chopping has come to an end. So the next thing we're going to do, I've got these here. I'm not actually going to fire these up just yet, but I'm going to get them ready on the stove to save some time. You can see my potatoes are boiling up. They're starting to bubble. Let those keep going. A little bit of air into there. And then the last thing I'm going to do for this recipe in terms of prep right now is I'm going to mince up these chives. Sent me a little box of fresh chives, nice garden fresh herbs. Again, it doesn't get much fresher than this. Chop those up. And these are really just to add some flavor and garnish to the mashed potatoes that we're going to be putting up in a little while. There we go. Chives are nice. They give you that nice oniony flavor. So there we go. So that's minced up nicely. All right, we'll set that aside for later on. I'm going to get rid of my green bean stems here. And yes, for those of you at Everly, you're probably saying, what am I doing with all that great compost? we're working on that. We'll get ourselves a little compost garden out back pretty soon. So all of these are working. Right now, I am just waiting on the timer to go off for these pieces. So while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to switch over to the chicken piccata. Now, this recipe actually says to get prepared, they sent along some tomatoes, some shallots, and a lemon. So we have our tomatoes, and they say to quarter them. We'll take our tomatoes, slice them here, slice them here, nice and quartered. They sent a small box along, basically a full-size ramekins worth. And again, so that we don't have to repeat the green bean episode, I went ahead and I quartered those for us a little earlier. Same thing with the shallots here. I took half of the shallot, already minced that up, but I'm going to show you. We have this one here. We're going to mince this one here, slice it nice and thin. Again, if anybody has some advanced, highly developed chef techniques who are watching and you're like, no, Chris, like this, feel free to send me a message. I'd love to figure out a better way to do things better. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to chop these here, kind of dice it up. Oh, I love the smell of shallots. You know, in the same way that chives give you that oniony flavor, but in a more subtle way, shallots are much, much more potent. I think they're so much more flavorful. You've probably heard me talk about it before. And dice it. I'm just going to kind of do this over what I've chopped up already, really get them nicely finely minced up. Is it perfect? No, but we're not aiming for perfect. We're aiming for fun, and we're aiming for tasty. And we're aiming for easy. So there we go. So put these in here. And then the last thing it asked me to do in the preparation for this is to zest and let me make sure I get it right. Zest the lemon, have it, and juice it. So I'm going to get one more ramekin. We'll put our juice in. So for zesting, some of you guys who watch my cocktail videos may recognize this. I love this tool. This is my all-purpose bar tool. It's got a little bit of everything in it. And zester is one of the key ingredients and one of the key tools, and I love it. So zesting, if you've never done it before, it really just requires you to use this grater and just kind of work off the peel, the outer edge of the peel. When you do this, you get a really strong lemony smell. What you're doing is you're releasing a lot of these oils that are in the peel that are just below the surface, where you really get your strongest lemon quality from it. So we're going to take that, we'll zest this up. You can see the zest of that. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to cut this up, and we're going to use our little juicer. It's the first chance I've had to use this zester. Nice and sharp. Maybe the drink this week, the cocktail video is going to call for something that requires a little bit of lemon zest so I can get more practice doing this. Not quite a practiced hand, but it sure is fun to play with. Now, if you don't have a zester, you can use a fine grater. Any sort of fine cheese grater will work. Or you can just cut off pieces of the peel, peel it very lightly, and then chop it up finely. It won't have quite the same effect, but it'll get the job done. It'll satisfy the needs of the recipe for sure. So here we are. There's our zest. Then, see all that? Oh, that came off of that lemon there. So the next thing it says is to go ahead and have it and juice it. So get my knife here. And I love this tool because it comes with my built-in juicer. I'm just going to juice right here. Now all I'm going to have to do with this is pick the seeds out. Look at that. Nice, quick, easy. So we'll set these aside. And then the next thing it says is to cook the chicken. Have the chicken breast dry and cook the chicken. So I've got, make sure I do this right. So here is my chicken. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Get it there. And my chicken's open here. And it says to place flour. Sent us actually a pre-portioned amount of flour. I know I should be using scissors. It says put the flour on a plate. So we've got a plate here. Putting the flour on the plate. And then it says to take the chicken cutlets that they sent along and dredge them in the flour. Okay. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. Actually, I'm not doing this right. So we're going to set this aside for just a moment. We're going to come back to our cutting board. And this will be the last time we use this one because we're using it for the chicken now. And it actually says to cut it into 3 pieces, 3 equal sized pieces. So that's what we're going to do. There's 1, 2, and 3. Another one. There we go. Get rid of this. Now, some of you are probably saying, wait a minute, why is he cooking and touching this chicken with his bare hands? Well, yes, in food service, they always say, be careful, especially with things like chicken. But since we're going to be cooking it, it's okay to handle this with bare hands because that's going to kill any sort of bacteria that's in it. That's one of the reasons why we have to cook it to the right temperature. So we have this cut up. Now we've got our flour on the plate. We're going to place the chicken cutlets in the flour. I'm going to dredge them up a little bit. I'm going to get these ready to go in our frying pan. We'll roll those around. Nice flour surface on there, nicely floured. While I'm doing this, I want to check on my meatloaf, so make sure that I'm doing okay time-wise here. So my first timer is just about done. So we've got this part here completed. So I'm going to set that aside. We're going to come back to that. And because I've had the chicken on the table and here on the cutting board, we're going to get rid of the knife we used for that. Make sure we don't cross contaminate. And I'm going to use a little cleaner here away from the food just to wipe down the table. I don't have pre-sanitized rags like you would at a restaurant. So this we will come back to. However, one final thing we are going to do. This recipe they did send to us. So that's our potato timer.
The potato timer is done.
Computer, stop. So that timer is gone. Now we're going to pull the potatoes in just a second. But one thing that they did send to me with the chicken piccata and the angel hair recipe is what they advertise it as. They send me a substitution. And I got to say, the substitution is very nice. They actually say, in order to bring you the freshest and safest meal possible, we are substituting angel hair pasta for penne in this meal. Instructions and timing reflect this change. Now, yes, I could make this with the penne, but I really had my heart set on angel hair. So I went rummaging through my cabinets and I found some whole wheat angel hair pastas. So this is where it goes a little creative and a little bit of a variation. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make the angel hair pasta to see how that one comes out. And I'm going to save the penne for another day. I know my kids love penne. I throw it in with some butter and some Parmesan cheese, and they are happy as can be. So while we're doing that, I've got these other things going along. I had this water boiling a little while ago. We're going to bring it back to a boil. And we're going to go ahead. We've got 8 cups of water with about a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to add about half of this angel hair because I'm going to cook all of it. Put it right in there. And just let that water come back to a boil and get that back up to where it needs to be. Now, that's done. We have our angel hair pasta cooking. We have our chicken cutlets are dredged. The vegetables are prepped. The next steps with that are going to be really easy. So we're going to move back over to our barbecue meatloaf. I'm going to go back to my potatoes here. I'm going to turn those off. Here they are. Nice, soft. We're going to take these. We're going to strain them out. Which I've had this tool for years. I love it. If you don't have one, it's one of the coolest things. You use this to drain your drain the water without having to get a big colander. Here we go. Here's my potatoes. You can see they still have the peels on them. We're going to take those, put it back into our potato bowl. And then we're going to follow the directions on completing the mashed potatoes, which is drain the potatoes. It says return to the pot or the bowl. We're going to add the remaining milk and a quarter teaspoon and a half teaspoon of salt. So we'll do that. Here's the rest of the milk. Grab some more salt. Did I put it away? No, it's right here. Grab some more salt. That's a half teaspoon as far as I'm concerned. And I've got my potato masher. Don't have to use potato masher. Just it's always nice to have one because they're handy and they're easy to use. You know, you can use a fork if you want to. But we'll go ahead and do this. Makes life a little easier. See how this experiment pans out. There we go. There we go. Look at that. Look at how easy that mashes up. We've got our mashed potatoes here. We're going to set these aside. Let them cool down just a touch. Make sure that I'm following my directions correctly. It says drain and mash, cover, and set aside. So you're going to set them aside, put the cover back on that right there, and let those sit for a bit. Check on my barbecue meatloaf. Here we go. Couldn't have timed that much better, could I? Go ahead and dismiss that timer, and I'll bring this out. Here, oh, I hope you can hear that, the sizzling meatloaf. So there they are. Then we're going to follow the directions here in the recipe, which say generously spoon barbecue sauce over meatloaves and then bake again until the sauce glazes the loaves 4 to 5 minutes. I want to make sure that I'm going to get this done correctly. Looking at this. So they sent along in this package 2 packages of Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. So what we're going to do is we are going to, there's 2 loaves here, but if you look at this picture, that barbecue sauce looks awfully fresh on that, doesn't it? Doesn't look like it's been cooked and glazed. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to use one, we're going to evenly distribute it across both of them. We're going to cook it for a little bit while longer, and then we'll take it out when they're ready to serve and plate up. We'll add the additional barbecue sauce on top of it. Not what the directions call for, but if I'm going to go and stay true to the picture here, I have a feeling that's probably where they were going with that. So we'll get this, we'll put some of the Baby Rays on top of this. Wow, that's thick. All right, so we've got one. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's what they were intending, because honestly, there is more than enough in one packet to cover one of these, to cover 2 of these at any given time. If you've never used Sweet Baby Ray's, that is some good barbecue sauce. So that's our first. I've got a brush here. I'm going to spread it out a little bit just to let it glaze a little more evenly. And then following the directions, as they say here, it says bake it again for another 4 to 5 minutes. So we'll do that, and then we're going to let them rest for 3 minutes. So I say, computer, set a meatloaf timer for 4 minutes.
Meatloaf timer, 4 minutes, starting now.
There we go. Now, while that's going on, I have my angel hair pasta is boiling up nicely. Let's see how we're doing here. Oh, that's just about ready. I'm going to bring that temperature down a little bit. I'm going to let it cook because, again, I'm not a big fan of al dente. Some folks are. If you are, that's great. I like it a little softer. So we've got our meatloaves back in there. The meatloaf's going to cook for another 4 or 5 minutes. When the timer goes off, we're going to let those rest. While the loaves are finishing, we are going to go back to our green beans. So the green beans have been sitting here waiting for me. I'm going to turn this on. There we go. And I'm going to let those cook up. Now, the directions for these pretty straightforward. Put them in a medium pan, cover with water, add a pinch of salt and pepper to the hot pan. Where's my pepper? There we are. A little black pepper. Now, if anybody ever feels really creative with green beans, I always like to throw a little bit of crushed red pepper in there too. I'm not going to do that tonight. But boy, not a lot, just a little bit. But a little bit goes an awful long way when it comes to green beans. Really gives it an extra kick. There's some salt. I'm going to let those cook up. Basically, not a lot of water in there, just enough to sort of boil, sort of steam up. So those are cooking right now. Those should take about 6 minutes. So when the meatloaf timer goes off, we'll pull the meatloaves out. We'll check our green beans and see how those are doing. We'll let them sit for a few more minutes while the meatloaves rest. While that's going on, let's go back over to our chicken recipe. Now, if you remember, I have my chicken cutlets here. They're sitting here in this in the flour. The next direction is we're going to get a pan. We're going to add some olive oil. We're going to heat it up. We're going to cook it on that. So I'm going to move my pasta to the back. I probably could drain it now. Probably should drain it now, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait a couple more moments. I'm going to get my frying pan. Here we go. I'm going to fire this up. I love cooking on this stove. It's a nice gas stove. I know I'm cooking at home this week, but next week I'll be back in the Everly guest suite. And the nice thing about the apartments at Everly is those all use gas stoves too. So there are a lot of folks who are probably used to cooking on electric stoves. One of the drawbacks to electric stoves, it's very hard to regulate the temperature accurately. With a gas stove, you really can manipulate the temperatures where you want them to be. Now, that said, if you're cooking at home and you've got an electric range, you can certainly make these recipes without a problem. But it is nice, especially for my residents at Everly, to be able to have the advantage of a gas stove where you can definitely adjust and compensate and be a little bit more creative. It allows for more creativity. So going back to this recipe, the pasta is cooked. It says reserve 1 cup of the pasta cooking water and then drain the pasta in a wire mesh strainer. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to toss the pasta with 2 teaspoons of olive oil while that pan is heating up. And just to make sure I follow the recipe a little bit more accurately, I am going to use a colander for this one. Here we are. Let that drain a little bit. I'm going to put this back over here. And as the directions say, 2 teaspoons of olive oil. And I just realized I got a little bit rambunctious there, and I didn't save the water. So I already know that's going to be a little bit of an issue because later on, that's the water with the starch in it is a sort of a thickening agent to thicken up the sauce that we're going to be making. So what I'll probably do to compensate that, and this is a great way, if you do this at home, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Your meatloaf timer is done.
Thank you, computer. If you get a little bit stuck doing that at home and you make a mistake like that, a little snafu, this isn't Food Channel. I can't go back and rewind and re-edit. So you got to be a little more creative. What I'll do is I'll just get a cup full of water like it asked me to, and I'll add a little bit of cornstarch to it. Cornstarch, really easy. You add it to the warm water, you stir it up and dissolve it. Air works as a great thickening agent. That's something we're going to use in place of my mistake of pouring out all of the starchy water. So. Getting that ready. I've got my olive oil in this pan as directed. We'll add our drained pasta to that. Use my strainer and just kind of mix that around a little bit. I don't know if this is the right way to do it or the wrong way. I'm just going by what they said. So here we go. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. As you can see, I measured that very, very accurately. And again, there's probably more angel hair pasta here than would have been sent along with the actual recipe box. Had they not made that substitution, throw a little bit more olive oil in there. You never go wrong with that anyway. There we go. And meanwhile, this is going too hot. So we're going to let that we'll correct a little bit along the way. Hey, remember the first time I did this when I burned the chicken? Well, this is why I say it's all practice and it's all experience. So I've got my green beans boiling here. My meatloaf timer went off a few moments ago. Let's check on how that's doing. Pull these out. Oh yeah. And here you see, there they are with the meatloaf glazing very nicely. We're going to take these out, and according to the recipe directions, it says to let them sit for about 3 minutes. So we're going to put them over here to sit. And my green beans are actually boiling as well. So let's turn those off. And we'll let those sit in water. I'm going to get another pot holder because things are getting hot over here. We can get rid of our potato pot. I'm not using that anymore. My meatloafs are resting. My green beans are sitting here kind of simmering in their own heat. My pan is ready for the chicken, which is what we're going to do next. So we have our pasta sitting here as well. Here goes chicken number 1 and 2. There we go. There we go. So my chicken cutlets are now frying up nicely. I can get rid of my excess flour. I'm not going to need that. Save that for the dishes later. And I'm going to go back to my chicken piccata recipe because everything from the barbecue meatloaf recipe is resting now. So going back to this, we've got our pasta. The pasta has been strained. We'll get our water ready. A cup of hot water. For those of you cooking at Everly, you know we have the hot water on demand. It takes a couple of seconds for that hot water to get there, so give it a minute or two to let it run. While I'm doing that, I'm going to add my cornstarch. Really doesn't take very much, to be honest with you. Nice and hot. There we go. So there's my cup of starchy water. Coming over my chicken. See how that's browning up. We let that keep browning there. My pasta. Going back to the pasta. We're going to take these chicken cutlets and we are going to cook them for, there's my dog. We're going to cook them for about 3 minutes on each side. So that's where we're about 1.5 minutes in right now. And grab another plate. We'll get these ready to transfer over. I'll raise my heat just a little bit. So I'm guessing that the olive oil is to keep the pasta from sticking as it sets, because we're not using it right away. And if you've ever done that with pasta and you let it sit there, it can get kind of sticky. Let that go. And then once these chicken cutlets are done, that's when we're going to get to our sauce, which is going to be We're going to add some olive oil and the shallot to cook that up for about 30 seconds. Then we add in the pasta water. They sent us a chicken base. Believe it or not, that's a little snippet of chicken stock. So we're going to add that in there. And half a teaspoon of the lemon zest, which we've got about maybe a teaspoon and a half. So we'll add a half a teaspoon of that, and we'll bring it up to a boil. Once that's boiling, we're going to stir it until it's thick, about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we're going to swirl in the butter they sent us. The butter they sent us, they actually sent me Creekside Creamery small batch European style butter. You can easily do this with some Land O'Lakes at home if you wanted to, but I will tell you, good quality butter does make a difference. I learned that the other way. I accidentally bought some of the Cabot's Amish butter, thinking it was something else. And I went home and I'm like, well, I've got it, I'll use it. And boy, I used that in a few recipes, and what a difference it made. So we've got this, we're gonna flip these over, and you can see these are browning up very nicely already. And really, that's all it takes, is about 3 to 4 minutes each side, and that'll cook through. Look at that. You can already see how that's going to look on our plate when it's ready. Give that a few more minutes. Check this out. So yeah, so I was espousing the benefits of good quality butter. It really did make a difference. We used it in a couple of recipes at home, sort of just by accident, and what a difference in flavor, what a difference in quality. The mass-produced butter is fun. You're going to get a great flavor out of it. It'll do the job. But if you ever want to just kick it up a notch and take it an extra step, take a little bit of time and invest in a higher quality butter. It doesn't cost that much more. We're talking, 50 cents to $1 more than what you would normally pay for some sticks of butter. But the difference in quality is really remarkable. So I would encourage you to try and experiment with that a little bit. We're going to get that rocking and rolling. And then what does it ask me to do with my tomatoes? Let me just check this. So we're remaining sauce in the pan. So it looks like we're making this sauce a little differently. So we're going to put this sauce together, and there's going to be the sauce for the pasta. And then we're going to be using what's left of the sauce, adding to that, and using that for the rest of the dish. So the way that the instructions read, it says, return the pan used to cook the chicken to medium heat. Add some olive oil, a teaspoon of olive oil on the shallot to the pan, and cook until it's fragrant. Stir in the pasta cooking water, chicken base, and lemon zest. Once boiling, stir until slightly thickened, remove from burner, and swirl in the butter. Add half the sauce, reserve the remaining sauce in the pan. Add half the sauce, tomatoes, and 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice to the pot with cooked pasta. Gently toss or stir to combine. And then we go back to the sauce and we add the capers in. So I would never have thought to do it that way. So let's see how this pans out. No pun intended. Let me see how's my chicken going. My chicken is done. That's great. Now we can use a little bit more. That one's ready. Good. There we are. All right, and they said, don't rinse out the pan. You want those flavors from when you were cooking the chicken to be part of your sauce. So that's what we're going to go back to next. We're going to add more olive oil. According to the recipe, it says 1 teaspoon. There's a teaspoon, as far as I'm concerned. And then we're going to add our minced shallot right here. So we're going to add that in there. The directions say cook until fragrant. So that's the beauty of shallots. They're awfully fragrant. We'll let it brown up just a little bit. Oh, gosh. And then the next step was to stir in the water, the chicken base, and 1/2 teaspoon of the lemon zest. So here's my chicken base. It's thicker than I expected it to be. And we'll add in our water. And then I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of the lemon zest. I always eyeball this stuff. I could go measure it out, but let's see. That's what we've got. We know that is probably about a half a teaspoon right there. So we'll go ahead and we'll add that in. I'm hoping we get to use more of it later on, because if not, I'm just going to use all of it. So add a half teaspoon. You know what? I'm going to go a little bit more lemony on this one, because it doesn't ask us to use it again. So there we go. I'm not using all of it, but I'm doing it to taste. So we've got that in there. Stir this around. It says to let that boil. So I'm going to up the temperature on that one, bring that up to a quick boil. And it says we're going to let it sit for about 3 to 4 minutes. So let that cook for 3 to 4 minutes. While it's doing that, I'm going to take my tomatoes as directed. I'm going to add that to my pasta sauce, or to my pasta. So those are in there ready and waiting for us. And just to get ahead of it, I'm going to add the lemon juice. I'm going to measure this one only because there's seeds in this one already, and I don't want to have to worry about that. So it says 1.5 tablespoons. 1.5 tablespoons? I got that in there? It looks like I might. Here we go. Let's do our best. Oh, look at that. There's one. That's about half right there. So there we go. So that step's already done for us. We've got our tomatoes added, and we have our lemon juice in there. Now it's just waiting for the sauce, which we've got simmering here on the stove. You can see it's already starting to thicken up a little bit in there. We're going to let it keep going, let it do its job. While that's happening, let's plate up our meatloaf. Different set of tongs. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this meatloaf here. Now, I did promise we were going to put some extra barbecue sauce on that, didn't I? So let's open up this one. Drizzle that on there a little bit. I can use the brush again because when I first used the brush, the meat had already been cooked, so I'm not worried about any sort of contaminant on that. That looks great. Now, the directions say plate it up as on the picture, so let's do our best with that, shall we? So we've got our meatloaf there. Let's go to our potatoes. Potatoes which have been sitting here resting and thickening up a little bit. Here we are. We'll get a serving spoon and put a dollop of those right here. Then we are going to dress them. So we're going to dress it with a little bit of the cheese that they sent along. And then we're going to put some sour cream on top of that. They send 2 packages of sour cream, so depending on how much you like, you can always put as much or as little on there as you care for. And to finish it off, we have our chives. And the last thing we're going to do, we're going to go to our green beans. Let's add some of those right here. Here's our first meal. There we go. Not bad. I think we came pretty close with that one. So we'll put that one here. And while we're going to go back to our chicken. Been boiling up, seasoning up, getting nice and thick, thickening up. All right. So let's bring this down heat-wise again. And just to make sure I do it right, we go back to our recipe. So we're going to add about half of this to the cooked pasta. Turn that burner off. Cover. So we'll add half of this. We want to use our spatula or scraper as well because we want to get some of the solid stuff in there as well. There we go. It's about half. Got the rest of it here. We're going to mix this up. A chance to get the tomatoes and the sauce and the shallots and everything all nicely placed over our pasta. Not too far off from what the picture looks like, if not necessarily the most stylish. So we got that there. We're going to go back to our sauce. The recipe says to stir the capers into the remaining sauce. So we're going to do that. And the one thing we missed, getting ahead of myself, a butter. So let's add that butter to our pasta sauce right now. There we go. Now, getting back to the pasta sauce that we're cooking here, we're going to take our capers, add that in on this. Doesn't say to return it to any kind of heat or anything like that. We're going to stir the capers in. This is what we're going to use dressing on top of our chicken when we plate that up. We're doing that. I want to get this butter melted in there. A little bit of a mistake on my part, but we'll get it there. And it's a learning experience for all of us when we do this. It's always kind of fun when I'm like, whoops, I've missed that piece. And we have to add it back in. Here we go. The butter's blended in very nicely all the way. All right. So next thing we're going to do, plate it up the way it looks on the picture. So let's see if we can do this one. Let me grab another plate. And we're going to start with some of these chicken cutlets. There we go. And then we are going to put the sauce over the cutlets, the capers. Might be a little bit too much, but there we go. We have our pasta. Our tomatoes in it. A little bit of color there. And let's see how we did. So here's our meal picture. There's our dinner plate right there. I think we did a pretty good job with that. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining me here in our Home Chef unboxing. If you've joined us and you've started ordering these kits, I hope you've had fun putting these together with us. If not, please check it out. We can get them delivered right to your door here at Everly, and you can make these meals right alongside me. You can laugh when I make mistakes, and you can come up with some of your own creations. But here's our two meals: the Classic Chicken Piccata and the BBQ Meatloaf, the BBQ Beef Meatloaf. They both look delicious. I can't wait to dive into these. I hope you have fun making them and enjoying them at home as well. Until the next time, I'll see you on Wednesday here for Bar from Afar, and again next Friday for our next Home Chef unboxing. Thank you, folks. Stay safe. Have a good night. Stay warm, and we'll see you back here soon.